the inner dialogue, that quiet whisper in the shadows of the mind. It's the voice no one else hears, the constant companion that reveals the cracks in the facade you wear so proudly. People think they know who they are by the masks they show to the world, by the roles they play in this grand theater of life. But it's in that secret dialogue, in the words spoken only to oneself, that the real identity lurks. That voice speaks the language of fears, desires, and truths that remain buried under layers of pretense. It's a mirror that reflects the darkest corners of the soul, the parts that stay hidden when the lights are on and eyes are watching. In the dead of night, when silence reigns and there is no one left to impress, what does that voice say? It reveals the essence, stripped of its bravado and stripped of its armor. The words muttered under the breath, the thoughts that spiral in endless loops, those are the true indicators of the person behind the mask. It's where the monster lives, or the coward, or perhaps the hero struggling to break free. But make no mistake, that inner dialogue is relentless. It betrays who one truly is when stripped of the performances put on for the world. It whispers harsh realities or deludes with comforting lies. But either way, it cannot be silenced. This inner dialogue is a battlefield. It's where the real conflicts rage, not in the streets, not in the office, not even in relationships. No, the real war is fought in the confines of the mind, where every doubt, every insecurity, every forbidden desire rears its head. This dialogue can be a tyrant, beating down every shred of confidence with a merciless fist. Or it can be a conspirator, fueling the flames of anger, of revenge, of ambition. It reveals the battles yet to be fought and the scars already carved into the psyche. And while the world sees only the mask, the inner voice lays bare every crack, every fracture that lies beneath. Most live their lives running from that voice, drowning it out with noise, with distractions, with the fleeting joys that momentarily silence the relentless chatter within. But the voice waits. It always waits. In those quiet moments when the distractions fade, it returns with a vengeance. It is then that the dialogue reveals its power, for it knows every weakness, every doubt. It knows where the fear hides and where the strength falters. It speaks the unfiltered truth, the kind that no one dares to admit even to themselves. The inner dialogue is a ruthless judge, unkind and unyielding, and it lays bare the soul with every whispered word. To confront that voice, to listen without flinching, is the greatest act of courage. It is the path to understanding who one truly is beneath the layers of artifice. That dialogue doesn't lie. It exposes the raw, unrefined essence of the self. It tells of the desires repressed, the rage suppressed, the dreams that lie shattered on the floor of the mind's dark chambers. In those moments, when the inner voice rises above the din of daily life, it offers a glimpse into the reality of one's own existence, a reality that is often far removed from the polished image shown to the outside world. Some let that inner dialogue control them, let it twist and bind them into the roles they think they must play. They become puppets to their own fears, dancing on the strings pulled by the voice within. Others learn to harness it, to listen to its whispers and confront its accusations. They learn that the dialogue is not just a reflection of who they are, but a map of who they could become. It is a guide, albeit a harsh one, pointing to the flaws that need to be acknowledged and the strengths that need to be forged. By the time the 20s arrive, the mind is already a machine, meticulously programmed by society, parents, expectations. Every directive, every rule, every spoken or unspoken command has etched itself into the psyche. It's not a conscious takeover. It's insidious, slipping into the subconscious, rewriting lines of code with every passing day. The original aspirations, the wild dreams that once roamed free in the corridors of youth, they are diluted, strangled down to a whisper, to the point where they're barely audible. The mind becomes a well-oiled puppet, strings pulled by the whims of a world that has no idea what lies buried beneath the surface. It feeds on conformity, thrives on predictability, demands obedience to norms that were never yours to begin with. Curiosity, the weapon of the original self, is systematically blunted. Questions are discouraged, met with disapproving glances and veiled reprimands. This is how it's done. This is what you should want. And with every nod of compliance, with every time one succumbs to the pressures of fitting in, the inner dialogue, that raw voice that once screamed of adventure, of breaking free, grows quieter. By the 20s, most have forgotten it entirely, mistaking the chorus of societal expectations for their own voice. They become actors playing roles in a script written by others, a script that demands obedience, that scoffs at deviation. They drift into a life that was never truly theirs, trapped in the gears of a machine they never asked to be part of. But there is a path back, though it's shrouded in the shadows of the unknown. To undo this programming, one must shatter the illusion of certainty, step willingly into the void where the rules blur, where the lines drawn by society fade into nothingness. It's a plunge into the dark, a rebellion against the very code that has governed every thought, every action, every decision. This journey into the unknown is not for the faint-hearted. It's a violent ripping away of the chains, a challenge to every line of code that has been hardwired into the mind. It requires a ruthless questioning of everything, of the so-called truths, of the roles played, of the desires pursued. For in questioning, the original self stirs. The inner dialogue begins to murmur once again, faint but unmistakable. Launching into the unknown means facing the terror of isolation, of breaking away from the safety nets woven by societal expectations. It means wandering into the labyrinth of the mind, seeking the fragments of the voice that once guided with clarity and purpose. The unknown is where the puppet strings are severed, where the mind learns to operate outside the confines of its programming. It is there, in the darkness of uncertainty, that one gathers information, fragments of knowledge that serve to rewrite the code. It is there that the inner dialogue starts to speak again, not as a muffled whisper, but as a voice gaining strength with every step. An idea is nothing but a spark until it is given form, until it is woven into the fabric of existence through action. To execute, one must strip away the noise, the distractions, and focus with a singular, almost violent precision. Write it down, carve it into reality with ink and paper. Make it tangible, give it a body so it can no longer lurk in the abstract. Then plan, but not in the endless paralyzing loops of overthinking that bind so many. Plan with a purpose, with the end in sight, and then act. Do not wait for the perfect moment, for the stars to align. They never will. The perfect moment is a myth, a lie told to keep you in chains. Take the idea and thrust it into the world, raw and imperfect. for. Imperfection is the crucible through which greatness is forged. Every word read, every page written, every move made should filter through the lens of that idea, through the vision that the inner dialogue has laid bare. This is not about balance. It's about obsession. It's about letting the idea consume you, allowing it to be the lens through which every decision is viewed. A life that lacks this filter, this relentless focus, is a life drifting aimlessly, a vessel without a rudder. To bulk up on ideas without execution is to weigh down the mind until it collapses under its own inertia. The mind becomes a graveyard of potential, haunted by the ghosts of what was imagined but never realized. An overweight mind is a tortured one, crushed by the mass of unrealized possibilities. It breeds a certain kind of madness, a chaos that grows in the silence between thought and action. To have ideas and do nothing is to invite despair. The mind becomes its own prison, where every unexecuted idea paces like a caged beast, gnashing its teeth, demanding release. It gnaws away at the soul, whispering of what could have been. To avoid this torment, one must become relentless in the pursuit of action. There is no room for hesitation, no room for the comfort of safety. An idea without execution is a corpse, a dead thing, rotting in the recesses of the mind. Filter every action through the idea. Let it dictate what is read, what is consumed, what is discarded. Every piece of information, every word taken in, should serve the execution of that idea. This is not a call for a life of moderation. It's a call for a life of intensity, where the mind becomes a forge, burning away the unnecessary until only what is essential remains. The overweight mind, bloated with unused ideas, is a mind that has betrayed itself. It has allowed fear and doubt to take root, to spread like a virus, paralyzing the will to act. Cut the excess. Execute with a ruthless clarity. Let the idea be the fire that drives every decision, every movement. When the gap between thought and action is reduced to nothing, the idea becomes reality. It is no longer a fleeting vision in the darkness. It is a tangible force that shapes the world. And in that process, the mind finds peace. Not the peace of complacency, but the peace of motion, of relentless progress. The mind, once burdened by the weight of unfulfilled potential, becomes lean, sharp, a weapon honed through the act of creation. The aftermath of neglecting the inner dialogue is a slow descent into a life that isn't yours. If you do not seize control of your narrative, if you allow that voice within to fade into silence, then understand this. The world will not hesitate to fill the void. If you don't create a routine, you will be assigned one. A routine designed to keep you predictable, manageable, docile. It will be a cage, gilded perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. It will be filled with tasks and duties that serve the needs of others. Routines that drain the soul while masquerading as normalcy. And the worst part, you may even find comfort in it, in the monotony, because it removes the burden of choice. But in that comfort lies the death of the self, the erasure of what could have been. Purpose works the same way. If you don't create your own, if you don't carve it out with blood and sweat, then someone will hand you theirs. They will craft a purpose for you, tailored not to your dreams, not to your desires, but to theirs. You will become a cog in a machine, a tool wielded for ends that do not concern you. And as you go through the motions, you'll tell yourself that this is just how life is, that this is what everyone does. You will bury the discomfort. the unease, the sense that something vital has been lost. That is what they want, what the system demands. Obedience, complacency, the quiet acceptance of a purpose assigned. People are too quick to adopt the structures laid out by others. They cling to them like lifeboats in a storm, desperate for anything that offers a semblance of stability. But those structures are traps, designed to catch the aimless, the ones who haven't fought to reclaim their inner dialogue. They promise security, but deliver servitude. They offer the illusion of meaning, while draining away the essence of life. The comfort they provide is hollow, a pacifier to numb the mind, to keep it from asking dangerous questions. Because once you start to question, once you start to seek, the entire edifice begins to crack. And that terrifies them, those who build these structures, those who enforce them. They thrive on the unspoken agreement that people will willingly lock themselves in these prisons to avoid the chaos of uncertainty. But uncertainty is the crucible in which the true self is forged. It is the darkness one must walk through to reclaim the inner dialogue, to find a purpose that is not a hand-me-down. Yet most choose the path of least resistance. They accept the routines, the roles, the purposes assigned to them, believing that this is the cost of survival. They shut down the voice inside that screams for something more, something beyond the chains of assigned living. And in doing so, they surrender the most vital part of themselves. They become shadows, echoes of what they could have been. The world is full of those who have surrendered. Look around and you will see them, the ones who move through life as if on autopilot, their days dictated by schedules they did not create, their actions guided by purposes they do not understand. They have been given scripts to follow, and they recite their lines without question, without hesitation. It's a slow death, one that doesn't announce itself with violence or drama, but creeps in quietly, day by day. It strangles the inner dialogue until all that remains is the dull hum of routine, the mechanical repetition of tasks that mean nothing. This isn't living, it's existing, drifting along in a life that was designed by others, for others. To avoid this fate, one must be ruthless. One must fight to revive the inner dialogue, to drown out the noise of the world, and listen to that voice within. It demands action, demands that you break free from the structures that have been handed to you. It calls for the creation of your own routine, your own purpose, one that resonates with the core of who you are. It requires the audacity to reject the comforts of the assigned life, to walk into the uncertainty of a life crafted by your own hands. Because if you do not, if you choose the path of surrender, then your life becomes a script written by others, performed for an audience that doesn't care. You become a pawn in a game you never chose to play, moving through the board as directed. The inner dialogue, the voice that could have been your guide, becomes nothing more than a faint whisper, drowned out by the noise of obligations and duties that serve everyone but you. And as time passes, the weight of that unfulfilled potential will settle in, a heavy, suffocating presence that gnaws away at the soul. So rise. Rise against the structures laid out for you. Create your own routine, your own purpose, one that is born from the raw whispers of your inner dialogue. Let that voice lead you into the unknown, into the chaos from which true life emerges. Refuse to be assigned, refuse to be defined by the easy comforts of compliance. Live not as a puppet, not as a shadow, but as the master of your own fate. For only then, when you have wrested control from the hands that would shape you, can you say that you have truly lived.